Hi, I'm Al Holland. I'm with the Medical Operations Branch at NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the psychological aspects of exploration missions and lessons we've learned from ISS. It started back with Mir, in the Mir days in the late 1990s, when the U.S. first entered long-duration space flight beyond Skylab. Our role basically as psychologists was rather limited in terms of crew selection, crew assignment, or assignment to a mission. And it has grown over the years as the culture of the agency has changed and as the profiles of the missions have changed. So originally, it began as where we were distant advisory people for the front door selection. As people came in the front door, they were brought into the agency. That particular role has grown over time and has become very fruitful collaboration with Flight Crew Operations Directorate and with the Astronaut Office. The Astronaut Selection Board, we now sit as an advisory member. We sit in on the Astronaut Selection Board proceedings, and we bring forward to the Astronaut Selection Board a person's relative strengths or liabilities as far as suitability goes with respect to ISS missions. That particular role has expanded as psychology has contributed more. And I think that's because the demands of the missions have changed. When you have shuttle missions, anyone can put up with anything for 2 weeks with just about anybody. But when you move out to 6 months, and now we're moving to 12 months, things change and it takes a little bit different kind of person. Originally, when you look back at the original 7, you can see that the agency was interested in test pilots. And as systems proved themselves and durations increased, it became necessary to look for people with additional skills in addition to high mechanical abilities and resistance to stress. So as far as selection goes, the front door selection itself has varied. The criteria have varied, and that has resulted in a little bit more of a balance toward the researchers at this point. And when it comes to long duration exploration missions, where you're looking at missions exceeding 12 months, or missions that have a significant time lag in communications and have a much smaller volume, then you're looking at different weighting of the competencies that an individual needs to execute those missions. And I think that we'll see, and I recommend that we continue to expand and to develop the collaboration between medical operations, behavioral personnel, and the flight personnel so that we can work together to find people who best match those criteria needed for exploration missions. One of the shifts we see is right now we're in a generalist mode where you need someone who is technically good at a wide variety of things. Everyone needs to be able to do an EVA. We've moved from the specialist orientation in shuttle, we've moved over to more of a generalist orientation. And I think as we move to exploration, we might be reaching back and maybe going back to a specialist approach where an individual can back up more than one person, but there has to be a deeper understanding of a particular system, electrical, mechanical, what have you, than is necessary right now when you have access to ground, immediate, real-time ground support. So when you're thinking about behavioral risk for long-duration exploration missions, first let's look at our target profiles. The significant variables that need to be accounted for, among many, the more significant variables would be duration of the mission. It would be whether there's a communications lag or whether there's a real-time comm, and the volume of the vehicle and how many people you put in that volume, which means the density, the social density of the vehicle. Those are the most salient in our discipline variables. Now, as you move out and you either have a comm lag or you have a much longer duration, which inevitably will involve a comm lag, your support requirements change. And so currently with ISS, we've been very successful at initiating a full court press in the support arena, and have had good reviews about the methods that we used to do that. That's based on the concept of adaptation, because what we're doing is we're putting high-functioning, normal individuals in a very abnormal environment. And this abnormal environment is this long-duration confinement away from family and friends. And sometimes it's even more detachment as you have a comm lag built into that. So basically, adaptation involves people and it involves the environment that they're in, including the mission profile. So what you want to do, in general, is you want the capabilities of the individuals to exceed the demands of the environment at all times. And so our full court press with ISS has always been to keep the scales tipped in our favor. So there's always a margin or a reserve that an individual can use in case of a contingency. That is, in case their environment suddenly changes, they have a depress or anything else, and the scales begin to tip back. So what we do, to keep the scales in your favor, you can either intervene on the people side or intervene on the environment side. And so what we do is we do both. So we intervene on the people side through selection at the front door, through training, through support. That is, we will be talking with them every 2 weeks with a private psychological conference. We'll be providing them on ISS with crew care packages, means to communicate with their family. These are critical items to keep the individual and their morale and their emotional sustenance at a high enough level so that they're able to deal with contingencies. We also intervene on the environment side in that we will have things on board that facilitate that. We make sure that we try to normalize that environment. We make sure that there's sufficient videos, that people are able to take up pictures of their family, that there are some personal items on board. So in an attempt to normalize that environment, again, so that the demands of the environment are lower than the person's capabilities. Now, as you move out into your exploration missions, that shifts a little bit in how you do that, but the basic tenet remains. You can either intervene with the people or you can intervene on the environment side. And so this brings up things like the importance of good sleep quarters, the importance of good food, the importance of maybe a virtual reality manner of communicating in batch style with family. There are a lot of implications for support for long-duration exploration missions that will change the way we're doing things right now. So right now we have the luxury of real-time comm. We have the luxury of a large volume. We have the luxury of a small number of people in that large volume. And so times are fat right now. It's going to require people reducing their expectations about what they might receive. It's going to require careful selection of the people that go into those volumes, make sure that they have innately a sufficient emotional resilience to manage those environments, and the sufficient personal autonomy, sense of purpose that's required to drive through those durations. So that's kind of an overview of what we mean by, or why we do support, and how you can intervene on those two sides. I think the ways we intervene on those two people or environments will differ when it comes to long duration, and will differ considerably when you have long duration comm-lagged missions. When the scales begin to tip against you, and they begin to tip against the individual that's in that environment, you can see that in several ways. Depending on the individual, they may have more physical complaints, backaches, that sort of thing. There may be just a drop in morale. And so an individual might just have a little bit of a drop in mood. It's often, as it progresses, it would be noticed by their crewmates. And their crewmates would start talking to the person or talking to each other about that. And essentially, that's the best thing, that we want the people around an individual who is having difficulty to be the first responders. That's the person, those are the people they're closest with, and those are the people that you want trained up so that they're able to do the initial intervention. Because the name of the game in this business is prevention. So we put most of our cards into prevention, but once you have a decrement beginning to occur, then it's arresting that slide. And the first people right there are the people that see them every day, and they would be the best. Then you have fallback positions. As things escalate, you have, with real-time comm, you have the ability to bring in ground, and you have the ability through a private psychological conference to speak with the crew member themselves, or family members to speak with the crew member. And the crew member can vent. The crew member can blow off steam and can look for different solutions to the problem by talking to other people that are outside of that crew circle. We're not going to have that luxury when it comes to long-duration exploration. So we're going to need to work around that. And one of the ways, of course, is to train the crew members all to be first responders for each other and for themselves. And not just train them to do that, but see that they have the ability to do that in actual analog situations or in previous spaceflight. And then we're also going to need some sort of onboard resource that an individual can use that's tailored for him or her regarding coping skills, different solutions to common problems, things that other people have done to solve a similar problem on past space exploration missions or on Antarctic missions. And there are a lot of ideas being tossed around in the virtual reality /IT range realm, and that's still being researched, but I think we'll go that way.